Okay. Good morning, Islanders. I want to tell you something. My greatest fear was that you wouldn't turn up. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. There are a couple of matters to take care of, and then I'll hand over to Lindsay, who's got a very comprehensive presentation that'll bring you up to date. It'll take away all the different things that everybody thinks. Firstly, I'd like to ask, are there any politicians here? Wow. Is there anybody from the media here? We've been doing this, our parking spot, for well over a decade now, and it's the second time we've had to call you out to inform you of the danger or worry we're in, and I'd like you now to hand over to Lindsay. Thank you.
Great to see you all here. I'll get straight into it, and if you will forgive me, I'll sit down. I have a bad back, but that's beside the point, but I do need to sit, so I hope you enjoy. Doesn't matter whether you enjoy, I hope you get informed. Okay, who are we, Gail and Lindsay? We represent the 662 people and businesses on the islands who legally assigned their voices to us to speak on their behalf in this matter. And this was a long time ago now, but it's enduring. The people who signed our various petitions, including the 1700 that we gave to Council in 2009, similar number to the state government, same year, and the more than 6,000 people, mostly mainlanders, who signed our petition that we presented to Council in 2011. I'm going to talk about this in two parts, some history. Can I ask for a show of hands, please, of those who were not here before 2012, who have come since? Wow, okay, down, that's a forest. So you probably are not aware of where this all started. So I'm going to give you some history and then we'll go on to bring you up to date, everybody. In 2008, Redland City Council issued its draft Redland Bay Centre and Foreshore Master Plan. There were about just over 1,000 car spaces controlled by Council at Wynham Creek at the time, which roughly was about 20% of the population on the islands at that time. The area was a mess. Cars were parked everywhere, as they still are, in private properties, along streets, and in many areas. And the objective of this Redland Bay Centre and Foreshore Master Plan was to tidy that up, to rationalise it, to concentrate us. That's a picture of where we were parking at the time. You can see the barge area up here where we still park, the shop, a lot of private parking. This is our main bitumised area that I'll talk mostly about. And of course, this was the Meissner Street overflow area, which is where the satellite hospital has been built. Distressingly, the master plan would reduce the number of council parking spaces from the 1,000 to 874, and the plan was to charge a fee for all parking, no free parking. Understandably, why? The philosophy of Council was this: to provide public parking without adversely affecting the visual amenity of the foreshore, the livability for local residents, or for encouraging excessive reliance on the motor vehicle by us. We could go jump. This is a little cartoon. Very talented lady on Lamb Island produced a number of these at the time. There we are out in the island, and there's the mayor at the time, and you'll see her come up a couple of times, so envisage Melva Hobson here to Karen Williams, our present mayor, but there she is standing at Redland Bay saying, "You can't park here." Understandably, we got angry. The obvious solution was always a multi-level car parking station on that bitumen area that I mentioned next to the ferry terminal. And when we presented that idea to council and the community in 2008, and that led to the formation, after meetings like this, to our parking spot group. And that group back then was 16 islanders who met every Wednesday night for 3 years, working to have council wake up. Our proposal for a multi-level car parking station was that, together with other parking, provided sufficient to meet our needs, with all-weather undercover access between the parking station and the ferry, located at a distance that was convenient for the elderly, the disabled, people with children carrying supplies, not half a kilometre away or a kilometre away. And that could be done only by locating the parking station at the ferry terminal. Nothing's really changed. We projected the number of parking spaces into the medium-term future based on that 20% ratio. For an islander population of 12,000, there will need to be about 2,400 council spaces. The last census we had, 2021, showed our population at 7,635. We could well be 12,000 by the time the present plan for the multi-level car park is completed, which is, guess, 2028. To achieve 2,400 spaces, we need a parking station of about 2,000 and the remaining 400 cars out in the open air beside the station. A 3-level car parking station for 2,000 cars to scale on our bitumen area, you can see there. That's an arbitrary shape. It's about 15,000 square metres on 3 levels. That's 2,000 cars. It can be any shape you like. If it were a 4-level, a 4-level station would have a footprint like that. Sorry, what's gone wrong? Going too far. There we go. That's the 4,000, that's about 1,200 square metres, and keep that picture in your mind, you'll see something like it soon. Okay, what did we do? For the 3 years, 2009 to 12, we, the group, took surveys, we wrote submissions, we spoke at general meetings, and we met with council officers, all in vain. Finally, we organised active community involvement. We had 5 public meetings like this, and that's Macleay Island in 2009, and it looks very similar. That's Russell Island, 2009, and sitting in the front is Melva Hobson, our mayor, on the end there, and our councillors there, as is our state member. We organised letters of complaint, and they were submitted by hundreds of islanders to council complaining about their plan. We raised several petitions to council and the state government. We took groups of 200 or more islanders more than once to demonstrate outside council chambers and at council general meetings. There we are in October 2009 outside council. April 2010, you can see crouched in the front, Gail and myself, me with my funny hat on. I should have brought that. Anyway, we blockaded council car parks in Cleveland to demonstrate what it felt like being unable to park. That was fun. And I tell you what, there are a lot of very angry council workers who could not park. We established a tent embassy outside the main doors of council. It was all legal. We applied to do it. We got permission. And that was manned by islanders 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 3 weeks. You can see Gail. We took up a petition at that embassy, and that was the one that was signed by more than 6,000 mainlanders and islanders, and we submitted that on 2011. Just a few of the others. Council didn't give a damn, refused to budge. It would go ahead to reduce the number and charge us all for all parking. There's our mayor talking to one of our tradies over there saying, you should be walking to work. You don't need a parking spot. This is another cartoon, if you like, a mayor and our then councillor sitting in their little sailing dinghy lollipop, about to be run down by the parking spot group. No need to change course, she says. We've got right of way. 2 weeks before the 2012 elections, we demonstrated outside council chambers, and that was attended by hopeful candidates for election at the time. You might recognise our present mayor and our present councillor, and there are others there. The day before the elections, our Grim Reaper stood outside council chambers, and the sign says, to the mayor and most of Redland City Council, you have been rude to me. You have ignored me. Tomorrow I vote. Unsurprisingly, they didn't get returned. Our action had succeeded with mainland help because of that big petition. We changed council. Right. The cartoon again, unfortunately, little lollipop's been hit and is sinking. The council we've got today is the council that was elected back then, riding largely on our backs. That is islanders. It's not us. There were hundreds of islanders. The new council did stop the plan. It was torn up, and in June 13, at the request of council, the state government declared the area a PDA, a Priority Development Area. What is the PDA? The PDA is meant to streamline planning processes and development. Redlands Investment Corporation, RIC, which you'll see on council websites being mentioned, is managing it. RIC is a company set up by council in 2014 to do many things, but at the end, to realise value for council and the community. This hasn't happened. The project's at least 4 years behind schedule, and council now says the construction of the multi-storey car park will not commence before 2025. We had a meeting with the mayor, Rick, and our councillor a couple of months ago. Some of the delay is due to state government approval, but Rick still hasn't produced the final plan for our parking station 10 years after the PDA was declared, and it's fortunate because its draft plan is unacceptable. The mess remains. We've lost Meissner Street, and we now have the Moores Farm at the bottom of the picture there. That's before it actually had the bitumen put on it. In 2014, that's the new council, it stated there is an opportunity for these areas to be rationalised, these parking areas, to ensure the demand is met. Remember that? They said to ensure the demand is met, whilst celebrating the foreshore and natural features of this area. So we have a bit of a conflict here, and that will come up. The mentality of the 2008 master plan remains today. That is, we'll give you some parking, but we will not adversely affect the visual amenity of the centre foreshore, etc. It includes these elements, our present PDA. They're going to reconfigure roads, which we can see happening over there at the moment. They're going to rejuvenate the parklands. Good stuff. New public open spaces with communal areas. Sounds great. Landscaped waterfront walkways. New pedestrian and cycle pathways. A new public boat ramp and boat parking, and I'll get onto that. And residential housing and apartment complexes. They do say increased parking, and they do say a multi-level car park, and they also say with more than 10,000 square metres of restaurants, cafes, grocery outlets and possibly a medical precinct, mostly occupying the ground floor of the multi-level car park. Islanders need parking on the area that was declared for harbour facilities, the bitumenised area. Islanders do not need any of the other facilities, do not need, we might like them, but we don't need supermarkets over there and so on, if it impinges on parking. So we're fine as long as we get our parking. Council says it needs the income from the sale of land within that area, selling off land so that people can put up apartment complexes, and from leasing spaces in the bottom of the multi-level car park to help fund the project. Well, okay, they can't afford to do it themselves. We've always said the council can do whatever it likes with the PDA, provided sufficient and affordable parking for islanders is supplied. Creating facilities on our toehold that deliberately reduces the number of spaces is unconscionable. The idea that the prime purpose of this area is to be a destination for mainlanders and tourists is objectionable. We're talking about the bitumised area next to the jetty, the ferry over there. And importantly, there must be spaces specifically for islanders. Parking for the restaurants and all those other nice things has to be additional to what we need. Parking for mainlanders using the area for tourism and as a park and ride, which some do to catch the buses, must be additional to that required. Overflow parking for the apartment complexes must be additional. And parking for car share businesses must be additional to that required. Council seems to have forgotten the need to provide parking for us. With the agreement of the state government, it intends to use our toehold, our only landing place, to create facilities for mainlanders. This is unacceptable. Council is approving several major fluff projects rather than real projects, according to former councillor Murray Elliott. This was recently in the media. The Birkdale Community Precinct, that's the whitewater canoe slalom project, is one. These projects will cost several hundreds of millions of dollars, while council sees as secondary our need for parking at Wynam Creek. Okay, now some of you may get a bit upset about this, but we'll see how we go. Affordability. Who are we? It's important to highlight that our community is among the most disadvantaged communities in all of Queensland. Based on the 2021 census, the Australian Bureau of Statistics puts out hundreds of different scales. One of them is the relative socio-economic disadvantage scale, where if you sit at 100%, you have no disadvantage. If you sit at 1, it's pretty sad. Russell Island sits at 3. Redland Bay, across the water here, 76, near the 100. Carragara Island, our most salubrious island, according to this, is 17. And Lamb and Macleay sit at 5. 100, 1, us. Bamaga is the same as Russell Island. Bamaga is an Aboriginal settlement on the very tip of Cape York. Carragara is almost the same as Thursday Island. Now, we have our millionaires, but they use all sorts of stuff in doing these scales. It's whether you're in work, property values, infrastructure available, like our dirt roads that we still have and so on. And overall, that's the official data. That's why we say it mustn't only be sufficient parking, it must be affordable. Many of us can't afford to pay commercial rates for parking. Examples: suburban car parks, Logan, Capalaba and others around Brisbane, monthly or looking at the yearly, you can pay between $1,800 and $4,200 out in the open air. Undercover between $2,500 and nearly $5,000 undercover, whereas at the moment the Redland City Council compound, the secure compound over at Wynong Creek, is about $1,200. So there's a difference. Some of us can afford the $1,200. I suggest that few of us could afford $2,000 to $4,000. But I shouldn't speak for you, but that's the principle. That's why council has to control the fees, and it must not allow private control of those parks, because that makes us hostage to their profit motive. Immense relief. Wow, we were pleased. In 2018, not so long ago, council reduced the concept plan for the multi-level. That's the plan there. And you'll remember back to the 4-level car parking footprint I had. It was on the bottom half of that picture. This is on the top half, and it's about the same. That car park, said council, would accommodate up to 2,000 cars in 5 levels. This met our needs as we had seen it, based on our projections. That's their plan. That was our footprint. We were pleased when, in 2019, in a flyer that we all got, acknowledged the need to keep parking affordable for islanders. It said, I quote, "Council is conscious of keeping the pricing affordable so that the island community will use it." Okay, we were very pleased. It also released its overall plan for the area, including Moores Road, which we know as that. It still had that same car parking multi-level there. In November 18, it said, but Moores Road was never intended to be the primary parking facility for islanders. Parking options on the ferry terminal side of the creek will be maximised so that the community is not reliant on Moores Road once the multi-level car park is constructed. Initially, Moores Road was meant to be where we would move from the bitumen, the cars would move to Moores Road when they built the multi-level, and then we would move back into the multi-level. And about half of it will be then converted, this is Moores Road, into 90 boat trailer units, cars with boat trailers and boats, when they relocate the ramp to the head of the creek on the south side, and that will leave 364 car spaces for all comers at Moores Road. That's the plan. At the moment we park everywhere. We lose 204, that gets changed into 90 boat trailer units, and we're left with the 364 down here, but it's not meant for us. They're going to maximise us near the ferry terminal. The PDA delays and island population growth has overtaken things. Moores Road's full. There's nowhere for us to move while they build a multi-storey car park. They're going to have to find somewhere else, and they have told us that that might be Cell Outreach Park. I'm not sure what the locals will think about that. A worry. In 2020, Council indicated again that it had lost focus on us. Wynong Creek is set to become an exciting and dynamic destination in its own right, as well as an effective transport hub and gateway to the islands. But we keep seeing this exciting, dynamic destination. More worry. 2022, Council and the state government negotiated the land swap. This is where the satellite hospital is now built. The council used to own the land at the bitumen. It was state land held in trust by council for harbour purposes, and that includes parking. It does not typically include supermarkets, restaurants and so on. They did that swap, so now council own the whole of that area and the state have built their hospital. That removed 100 spaces from Meissen Street where the hospital now is, and it lost the income that council had expected from selling that land to a developer for medium density housing. So the income to help fund the PDA is lost. So it also removed the state from specific involvement in that area, the land. It's now council's worry. More and more worry, dearie me. 2022, it changed its idea. The new multi-level would have only 2 parking levels and would accommodate about 800 cars in total. There would be provision to add 1 more level in the future to give a total capacity of 1,200. This doesn't meet our needs, remembering we're looking at 2,000 in the previous one. That did meet our needs. We're now back to 1,200 if they put on an extra level. That was their plan now, or then. So there's the planning department, less parking, more barbecues, 100 islanders equals 10 mainlanders, etc. In 23, May this year, it changed its mind again. Upon completion of the PDA redevelopment, the project will provide more than 2,200 car parks in total. Every time it changes its mind, we're worse off. The 2,200 spaces will include the 364 car spaces at Moores Road that I showed you. They add in the 90 boat trailer unit spaces. What that's got to do with car parking, I'm not sure. It's going to cater for the shopping centre parking under the multi-storey and all the restaurants and the cafes. And it will include designated spaces for car share businesses, and it'll have the 1,200 maximum multi-level car park. The cost to park, says council now, in the multi-level will be in line with market rates. The spaces will be for anybody and everybody, not only for us. We've heard it all before. Council is remaining focused on this vibrant, fun waterfront. We come second. That's the state member talking to our mayor back then. Don't worry about remote communities. It's their own fault for living there. The 2,200 do not include the residential car parks where we're parked out in Outridge Street and Banana Street and all over the place. The problem is that they will eventually disappear, most likely because all of that area is zoned to allow the building of apartment complexes that was up to 11 metres. And right now, people who walk past there will have seen the development sign on the properties in Meister Street at the end of Banana and Outridge Street, where there are going to be 54 apartments built and 120 childcare centre. That's the start of it. That whole area, you can see, eventually will be like that. We will not be parking. I park in a backyard now. They will likely disappear. So we're left with the bitumen and Moores Road. Those of us who do presently pay are likely living on borrowed time. While accepting that council needs funding, it mustn't lose sight of our need for parking. There are at the moment 1,996 car spaces, let's say 2,000, overall, that's including everything, in the precinct now. The PDA is going to give 364 at Moores Road, not intended for us, and gives a possible maximum of 1,700 car spaces at the ferry terminal, including a possible maximum 1,200 in the multi-level, no spaces dedicated for islanders, and the cost will be in line with market rates. These are the areas where we park now. After the PDA and after the development of the private properties, that's what we'll have left. Do that again. Now, then. I almost ran out of space saying more and more and more and more. Good news. In 2023, June, last month, Rick, that's Redlands Investment Corporation, replied to our correspondence that it and Council shared our views about parking. We, of course, have been writing and so on, and is considering additional options. Council then indicated that it believes an additional option is to have privately operated car parking stations built on the area they're talking about apartments before, Outreach Street, Banana Street, private car parking stations that will provide the additional parking we need. Shocking, morally unacceptable, given Council's knowledge of our socio-economic status. We say again, we cannot afford to pay commercial rates for parking. Why should we have any parking? It's important to remember that the area adjacent to the ferry terminal, as I said before, was state land held in trust by Council for harbour purposes. That's that area with the black outline. This is where the ferries come in, and this is the bitumen area. This is an old map. This is a spoil pond, which is now filled in. We park there, and we park through on the end of the Anzac Park there. The declared purpose, being harbour purposes, is why we've always had parking there. It's our mainland garage. It's our towhold. It's our only place where we can enter the mainland. And parking has almost always been free. The secure compound was established in 1990. That was, I say later because I've been coming here since 1973. Many islanders have come here knowing they can park at Wynong Creek, mostly free. When they come here, they look to see what facilities are available. They see that they can park, so they decide, yes, we'll go there. It's always been so, and the reasonable expectation is that it will remain so. This area is now part of the PDA, and Council and State Government can now change the use as they see fit, and they are doing it to our great disadvantage. Many of the facilities now planned have nothing to do with the harbour or islanders. As I've said before, they're for the benefit of tourists and mainlanders. Arguments that we should reduce our use of this area to benefit mainlanders are offensive. This shows you that there are lots of public open spaces around the area. This is our little area here, our only area. They have to keep it for us, so we say. Why do some islanders need parking at Wynong Creek? So we can drive to places where we work. You know, we can have a tradie carrying his ladder and his toolbox onto a bus, I suppose. No. So we can drive to medical or specialist appointments. So we can purchase food and other supplies as we require. So we can receive services from professionals and tradespeople who need to park at Wynong Creek, jump on the ferry and come and see us. So we can drive to visit friends, and so our friends can come and visit us. They need a park over there. And so we can travel as other people do if we wish. Parking must be provided for all islanders who have a reason to park at Wynong Creek, estimated to be about 20%. And this is important. All islanders who park at Wynong Creek must have a spot to come back to. It's all very well to say it's a 3-day park, leave. So what we do, we go over at the cost of the ferry trip and we try and find another spot. otherwise we might get fined. But if we drive away to watch the movies at Victoria Point, when we come back, we need a spot. If you've driven away from your parking spot and can't find one, you can't go home. And you wouldn't be the first person that coming back can't find a spot, had to drive off in the night, find a safe spot in a side street somewhere and sleep in the car. And that's still happening. Another one of these cartoons, little Tommy saying to Mummy, "Is Daddy coming home tonight?" And Mummy says, "Maybe, dear, it depends on the parking." Council and the state government must accept that Wynan Creek is a working port. It's always been that. Harbour purposes. It is not a place for leisure. They must plan accordingly. Council doesn't seem to think our numbers are right, so we've written to them and asked them to do their own survey to determine what our need actually is. To date, nothing has happened. And they must extrapolate our present needs into the future. As most of us will know, our islands are destined to reach between 22,000 and 24,000 people. We're about 7,500 presently. That means the parking has to be on a 20% basis, 4,400, by adding extra levels to the car park as and when required. Okay, I say again, our tow hold, it's always been dedicated and they must not restrict us. We've always said, again, they can do what they like providing they give us parking sufficient and affordable. It mustn't use demand-side management techniques. There are hard and soft to stop the demand. They can restrict the parking supply. If there's not enough parks, well, the problem's gone away from their perspective. There's no parking. They can charge fees and stop us from parking because we can't afford it. They can impose 3-day limits and so on. Even though we need a car to keep coming back, we actually need a permanent spot. And they can get the police and their officers on board to fine us out of existence. Soft demand management options include carpooling and car rental, and we have a very successful car rental business operating over there at the moment. They did a survey in 2009 that showed that 82% of us would not consider car rental or carpooling. Only 4% would consider car rental, and they're not anywhere near that yet. Kim Richards, our present state MP, has declared in the past, I quote, "I will continue to be the strongest possible advocate for our island community." I believe she has accepted our invitation and she says she'll be at Russell Island this afternoon. I wrote to Kim Richard in May this year seeking to have her get state government to negotiate with council to see if they could help council meet our needs. And we've invited her to these meetings, as I said, but she is saying in the reply to our invitation that the PDA is solely a council project, and we disagree. The state must not wash its hands of this matter. Her strong advocacy is requested. Park and ride. Department of Transport, Queensland, is responsible for park and ride, where people come to that area to catch public transport, which some mainlanders do. For that reason alone, the state government must help with funding. The state government bears ultimate responsibility for us and our needs over there. During the 60s, it allowed, just history, it wasn't until 1973 that the islands became the responsibility of council. Prior to that, they were a state government responsibility. State government owned us. In the 60s, it allowed unfettered subdivision into 18,500 small lots or thereabouts without any controls or consideration of the infrastructure required, which is why land was sold underwater on Russell. We have roads going on the planning, early planning across gullies and so on. No controls whatsoever. That was under state government. When they handed the islands to the council in '73, it did give some money, but not enough to allow council to catch up with the facilities and so on that we need. It must not excuse itself from helping to provide our parking needs. Oops. For instance, the new park and ride facility on the eastern side of Castleton Station is now complete and open just recently. It provides 206 additional parking spaces for Northside commuters, fully funded by the government, $15 million for 206, an extension for 206. We want some money, please, to help council. We send invitations to this meeting, as well as to Kim, to the Mayor, all councillors, the CEO of RIC, Peter Kelly, and Chris Isles, who's involved with general managership. None accepted our invitation. Hung out to dry. There's a council bureaucrat. There's little Macleay. There's Russell, Carragara and Lamb, with a smiley mayor and a somewhat startled councillor at the time. 15 years we've been working on this. The struggle continues. Working together should be our best hope. But if reasoned argument continues to fall on deaf ears, active community engagement again might be our best option. Remember, there are 2 elections next year, council in March, state in October. We can let council and the state government do what they want about parking and suffer the consequences, or we can bring our plight more forcefully to the attention of council, the state government and the wider public. We have to decide. We. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, everyone. Lindsay's presentation was very comprehensive, for sure. And he's quite right. We have been on this matter for 15 years. And every time we feel there's a danger, we've called meetings. So, firstly, you know, you thank Lindsay, but one more time, he's put weeks and weeks into this. So what we have is a PDA development that fails to provide enough parking spaces for us now, let alone into the future when we reach Ireland's capacity of about 22,000 people is what is expected. So that's over half again, or nearly twice again the amount of people. Imagine it. Council and state government intend to bring our toehold at Wyndham Creek to residential apartment blocks, supermarkets, restaurants, cafes, supermarkets, and all of those employees are going to need a park. And everybody that goes to those supermarkets and restaurants, they're going to need a park. And there's not enough there now. This has little to do with what the islands need. It is more or less what they are planning over there, a tourist and mainland pretty area. Do you agree? Yes. All we need is our parking toehold. Right now, we islanders have approximately 2,000 cars parked at Wyndham Creek Precinct. Council intends to provide a maximum of 2,100. Including those at Moores Road for everybody, not just islanders. There will be no secured paid parking. unless you go, as Lindsay said, into a commercially operated, like Wilson's or King's, parking station, and you give them your wages so you can go to work to pay them. And remember, for council, the 2,100 spaces, none are specifically for islanders. So when you leave your park, you don't know where in the hell you're going to park when you come home. Does that worry you? Yes. Does that worry you? Yes. Worries the hell out of me. And remember too, the state government has a responsibility to help us. The state government have a responsibility to help us. If I can enlarge on that, over at Springfield Lakes, they've just finished building a park and ride of, I think it's 1,600 parking bays for people who live at Springfield Lakes to catch the bus, to catch the train, and do what they're doing. That parking station is absolutely free. It's absolutely free, as are the other park and rides around the state. They're absolutely free. Our taxes paid for all of that. Our taxes pay for the tunnels. Our taxes pay for the bridges. Why are we sitting here in a dilemma? Good question. It is a good question. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for coming. Has anybody got anything they'd like to say? Come over here, sir, please, so they can hear you.
Ian Olsen, you most probably saw that I wrote in the Bay Islander a thesis on what was being provided, and saying that bugger all more was being provided at Wynham Creek. But my question is that it's always alluded that we're going to have 364 spaces after the boat trailers are put in at Moores Road. That figure is incorrect. It's 297, and on page 107 and 102, I think you've made this error that has gone right through the documentation of the departments, because what they did was excise the 67 parking spaces that were in the creek, and those parking spaces are now the Dragon Boat place. So it's now only 297 spaces. So that really means that the number of parking spaces there is equated to what would be provided with the multi-level car park. So the multi-level car park with 1,452 as it was, and now it's going to be reduced to 800, I hear, but they have to provide 800 secure parking spaces by 2031. I'd just take this quietly and see what they're going to do, but really before the election, do something in a big way.
Thank you, Ian. Sir, your name?
Hello, Ian Dyer. I've lived here for quite a long time, since 2000. I've lived here since 2009, and I see from the show of hands earlier, there's a lot of people who've not lived here anywhere near that amount of time. These islands used to be classified with the council as rural communities and rural islands, so that we had special privileges, some of which we still have, which are connected with vehicles, but other privileges like reduced rates were taken away by the council, because the council said that we had all the facilities of the mainlanders. Now, that has never been the case, is not the case now, yet we pay the same rating levels as the mainland. Now, the council are actually, from my point of view, enforcing the islands into a greater level of poverty. I don't know about everybody else here, but I can't afford to pay parking fees on the mainland, and I suspect many others here can't as well. And in addition to that, I suspect that the requirement for disabled parking on the mainland is greatly inadequate. If you're disabled and have to walk to Moores Road to park, which is a very real reality, you might well need to stop and use an artrolingual spray because you're suffering with chest pains before you get there. And that's a reality for some people. Now, the thought that comes to my mind is that the council are very money orientated. They love to raise funds from parking fines, which they do frequently, and even down here at Macleay at the ferry terminal, because the parking there is inadequate. One thought that comes to my mind, which many might think is very radical, is that if we say to the council and the authorities, if you are not going to meet your historical obligation of providing adequate parking for the people of the islands at Redland Bay, we will withhold our rates. Now, I'd like to add to that, I've lived in England for many years, although I was born here. In England, there was a change of rating policy under Margaret Thatcher, which caused a lot of problems, a lot of extra expense for many people. There was quite a rebellion about it, and some of the elderly people that were most affected stopped paying their rates and were put in prison. The situation escalated and it got to the state where so many were not paying, they reversed the decision and went back to what they were doing before. Now, if I refuse to pay my rates, I can end up in prison, I can end up having my house taken away, I can end up living in the streets. But if there is unity and solidarity and everybody does it, they will not put everybody who lives on the islands into prison. They will not confiscate all their houses, because it would become a national outcry. It would become something that the council would become ashamed of. And I think that they actually need to wake up to the fact that they are not supporting the people on the islands. The councils are there not for us to support them. The councils are there to provide a service to the community. And I believe they need to wake up to that fact.
Adrian Woodcraft. We've been on the island for 2.5 years. I'd like to start off by expressing my admiration for the work that has been done, for the persistence in pursuing this, and for a presentation which has very clearly setting out for all of us the rights that we have and the way these rights have been trampled by people who are probably running on ego agendas. Right, I can't put it any closer because my whiskers are getting tangled up in the wire. That way? Ah. So yeah, first of all, my admiration, thank you very much. Secondly, I'd like to ask a question. I don't know whether this is proper. Would it be a fair thing to take up a voluntary collection to help fund what has been going on our behalf with no apparent input of capital to support it? No? All right, that's that. Gosh, so many ideas came, it's hard to marshal them all. One thing that I think we all need to keep in mind is that we own government. Government does not own us, and that we fund government to meet our collective needs, not to feed the egos of expletive removed. So I fully support what Ian has just said about Oh. Yeah. Mentally frozen. Yes, the withholding of rates and taxes until our employees follow the directions from employers. I'm having a mental fog here, so I'll stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have to move through pretty quickly. We've got to go to Russell Island, and we need to get some consensus. So if these few speakers can be fast for us, please.
Hello, I'm Ross Byrne. I did a bit of work, fought the council for 4 years to try and improve the roads here on our island and on Russell Island. We got some improvements about 2 years ago, but they've lapsed. But the one thing I did find is that they will do whatever they want to do, and they have no fear of us. However, one of the things that the only way that I could counter them was to go to to make representations to the National Silicosis Inquiry to push our case, and also to push our case to the state government at that stage. It was about the only thing that I could do to actually get this council to start to think about things. Having said that, if we try and beat them via the ballot box, we can't. We can bring in, or we can vote for half a councillor of a council of 12 or 13. They're not interested in this island. They're interested in their mainland. The other thing is that we have one representative in Parliament. One representative, similar sort of figures. We can't win. The only way that we can win this case is actually, and I don't know whether we have any people, but to get some people with a legal background and take them on legally. They can go back to the original establishment legislation. The legislation has a lot of power. Go back to the original legislation, find out what was promised, and be able to put a case to whatever representative body there is, which will be the courts, and to push the case. Going on that presentation today, there is an extremely strong case to stop the council and even to stop the state. But you can only do that through the law now. They've got too much power, too much has been done. You need an immediate legal clamp on what they're doing.
Hi, I'm Sandy Newcomb. I've only lived here since November 21, but I like to think that I'm in part of the community. I'd like to see a show of hands of how many pensioners we have here. Wow. How many disabled people we have here. Right. There's never a car park for a disabled person. Never. I'm absolutely horrified at how few they've got. Also, if they want to charge pensioners the going rates, none of us will be able to get off the island because we won't be able to afford it. I would like to see them put rates down for the islanders and find more spaces for pensioners. I've had to struggle from Moores Road with a walking stick, carrying a whole pile of bags in this side and carrying a trolley on the other. And that's a hell of a trip. And by the end of it, I'm totally exhausted and screaming in pain. I don't think that that's fair. Okay, thanks.
I'll be brief, Gail. And Lindsay, thank you. Keith Burns is my name. I live up in Alkira Street. I've been here about 5 years now. I'm currently a fly-in, fly-out worker. But, and I'm actually going to have a crack at Division 5 next March. I ran for council 4 years ago on the mainland, but I'm going to have another go because we need someone that lives on the island. I think there's a couple other nearby that are also going to put their hand up. And we won't get into any head-butting clashes here between me and Gail, but I'm very interested in running. I just have a quick answer a possible answer for the current situation. We've got to deal with what we've got at the moment. We're all struggling to get parks. I think, if I just wanted to ask Lindsay, I heard a figure of there's about 2,000 available at the moment in the dirt car park and around the place. I think I'd like to know how many residences are on the 4 islands, individual houses that are occupied, like I live at 3 Alkira Street. I think there should be a park allocated to every established house. One park, and your number plate or your name goes on it, and with what we've got now, we've got to get that up and running now, because there's going to be a couple of years till we've got allocated the high rise and all the other movements. But if we can somehow get a park allocated to us now with our number plate, and if I come back there and someone's in my park, unless it's my mother or my father or my brother, it gets towed. I don't know whether we can do that, but I'd really like to look into that, because, and that way we've got our foot in the door when we get the other parking. Your number plate will go on to whatever, the high rise or the one at Wynham Creek or whatever. But I think that's something that I would like to pursue, to lock in a car park for us all now. If there's 2,000, I don't think there's 2,000. Do you know off the top of your head, Lindsay, how many residences are on all the islands?
Well, there's about 7,500.
No, not residents. Residences that have...
resident, yeah.
Actual houses, yeah, like each house could only get one.
Probably about 11.
200 flyers went into Russell Island. There are 2,000 flyers went into Macleay, Carra, and so about 4,000.
4,000 houses, all right. And we know some, like I've got a neighbour, he doesn't need one over there, he lives on the island, takes his car home. All right, I'm hurrying up, Gal. All right, but that's an idea. I don't know what people think of it, we can all talk about it. Oh, Keith Burns. I'm going to have a go at Division 5. I'm very interested in... We need someone on the island. Thanks, Gail. Thanks, Lindsay.
Hi, Marike Jensen. Thank you so much for these guys for what they've done again. I think they've done a lot of footwork, but it's now up to us, and that's why my biggest question is what's next, because some people were already leaving. So I think we're here in great numbers. We should take this moment. The politicians are great that they're going to help, but I think the other gentleman was more to the point. Maybe legal action would be one. It's also something that might be some of us can help with. It might be something like we establish an organization. I don't know if you have a solid organization. We collect, for instance, $1 per week from every resident that wants to join this movement organization, and we build up a fund to pay this lawyer or to pay this legal action or some other action. But my question, and I think from my friend as well, is what are we going to do next? And I think that's the most important thing about all this. You've done amazing work, but what shall we do next?
So guys, that's the $64 million question. What are we going to do next? Lindsay Hackett and I have kept things going. We've had members that have passed away that were with us. We've had all those members. Gay James was the lady you saw in the Grim Reaper suit. Ellen Ulrich, who organised all of the 10 embassy years and years ago. These people have passed away. So where to now? Firstly, who believes that the state government should be assisting council to provide our parking? Okay, that's pretty clever. That's pretty clear. Now, there's Lindsay and I. Who can join us for the next move forward? Raise your hands. If you will attend meetings, if you will help us move forward. Thank you. So before you go, we need to see you people, and we also need to skedaddle out of here and get over to Russell Island. And let's hope we've got the same crowd over there. Is there anything else, Lindsay?
Just one thing, if you put your hand up to help us, it does take time. We obviously try and help people fit in, but we do need people, if anyone's got any executive experience, but any experience, people who are willing to help us draft letters, to help us if we go to community action, are prepared to organise signage, help us write letterbox drops, as Gail and I have just done, 4,200. All sorts of help. So it doesn't really matter who you are, but if you can come forward at the end of this meeting here, I'll get you to put your name on a bit of paper so that we can contact you. Thank you.
Dear Islanders, thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. And please come forward. Those that can help, please come forward. Please come forward. See Lindsay. We've got a battle on our hands.